All right, and we should be live. This is great. Hopefully, I'm sure we will have a few more people filtering in. We'll start letting people in from the waiting room. That's great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're just going to give it a few more minutes, wait for some additional people to start filtering in. And then I will do some quick introductions and let Calum take it away as soon as possible. If anyone has any interest in throwing in the chat where you're joining us from today, I know we have quite a global community out there, and so feel free to pop in the chat where you're joining us from. Hey, Nez, how are you?
Hi, good to see you. Exciting stuff.
This is very, very exciting, very exciting. And I have a feeling, I think we'll be a relatively small group, at least at the beginning. So if anyone, feel free to do some introductions. I think we'll probably just give it a few more minutes, see who else filters in. And then, as I mentioned, I'll let Calum take it away with his presentation.
Perfect.
Ines, what are you doing here? You are such a nerd.
I am, right? This is great. Seeing those nerdy faces, that I so appreciate. So this is super good to end a Wednesday on a high note.
Nice. I see Mick has found some time as well.
Yeah. Mick, are you there? Not yet. Oh yeah, okay. Hi nonetheless.
Yeah, he's just not talking to us.
All right, I say we go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll have a few more people filter in as the event goes on. I have the great honor of welcoming Calum today to share with us about innovation ecosystems in Estonia. I'll give a brief introduction for myself and Forward VC. Go ahead and introduce Calum, and then Calum, you can go ahead and get started on your presentation. So quick, just a little blurb about Forward VC. We're basically putting together these events, to bring the global climate tech innovation ecosystem together. We're constantly looking for presenters and experts such as Calum to put on events, help us put on events like these, to share expertise and overall just drive the industry forward. So Calum, thank you very, very much for your time. Calum is based in Estonia. And his presentation will discuss kind of how Estonia went to being the world's first digital society and engineering the most startup unicorns per capita in Europe. So shaping up to be a very interesting presentation. He currently works for a sustainability consultancy called Edasi Labs, and I'm sure is joined here by some of his great coworkers. So Calum, feel free to take it away. Thanks for being with us.
Super. Thank you very much, Gina. Yeah, as you said, I'm based here in Tallinn. I'm actually an Australian, but have been here for quite a long time now. And you're right on the call here. Whilst I'm going to use Estonia as the sort of context for what I've sort of been learning along the way, I want to throw out to everybody else who's on the call here just to engage with as well, because these are just my ideas and what I've learned about sort of ecosystem building and how we can take that into the world of sustainability. But at least a couple of people on this call know as much, if not more, about the development of the Estonian ecosystem to me. So just to be clear, I'm going to cherry pick from the history here. So forgive me if I don't cover everything that you think is important on the Estonian side, guys. But okay, on and upwards. So yes, from Estonia, I build open innovation strategies for big corporates and industry and governments. I also am the sustainability strategist for a new sort of smart urban innovation, smart urban development, let's put it this way, down in the south of Estonia. Realized I was throwing in a lot of hype there. Again, what I'm going to share here is what I've learned, what I've observed here in Estonia, watching and sometimes contributing to the evolution of the ecosystems here. In particular, the symbiotic rise of the digital society and the startup ecosystems. As I say, I think they actually supported one another greatly over the years. Okay, so just quickly, been coming and going from Estonia since '94. I had an IT background, which meant that I was able to slot into hybrid work from Estonia for UK companies back when we moved over here. I was then later tricked into running a startup accelerator, which is how I got from the internal sort of corporate digital transformation into the startup ecosystem. I was just absolutely stunned by the ease with which somebody from outside, somebody new to the system, could rapidly access the sort of the godfathers or the godparents of the ecosystem. So they're the unicorn founders from Skype, the architects of the Estonian digital government, the active decision makers inside the government, all of these people only being a single call away. So you could really share ideas and information and move ideas in particular rapidly through the space. And that's still the case now. So I think anybody who is here in Estonia trying to create value will get all the support they're looking for from the communities and from the ecosystem. So for those who don't know where Estonia is, and looking at our list of participants, I think everybody does, but just in case, Estonia is way up in the north of Europe in an area that I call Viking Europe. This is where Estonia and its Nordic neighbors used to take turns terrorizing one another back in the late first millennium. Small country, 1.3 million people, but it's a perfect size country to test bed moonshot ideas. It is the first and most advanced digital society in the world. And I say that it's still the most advanced, even though a lot of countries are now bringing out solutions which are newer, shinier, and as a point solution, more advanced than Estonia. So coming from Ukraine, from the UK, from Singapore, etc. But none of these countries is as systemically digitized or digitalized as Estonia is. So information is moving between the private, the civilian, the public sector constantly, which means we can actually build integrated proactive solutions on top of that. And what's really important about that is that it removes friction from society here. And by removing friction, you open up people to being more experimental and more innovative, just because there's less hassle involved in doing so. There's less bureaucracy in all of that. Headlines, it takes less than 20 minutes to create a company here. Takes, on a bad day, 5 minutes to do your annual tax return. Estonia also invented e-residency back in 2014, which means that citizens from all around the world can actually become e-citizens or e-residents of Estonia and take advantage of these digital platforms for their businesses. And the amazing thing is that it only took 6 months from the idea through to actually opening that to a global audience, which is phenomenal for a government to move at that pace, let alone the private sector. On the startup side, Estonia has the most unicorns per capita in the world. It's also the third highest for startups per capita in Europe. Again, I might be slightly behind here, but still the case for the unicorns per capita. I think anything startups per capita might even be getting higher. They might even going up the ranking there. On the sustainability side, we're not quite a global leader yet, unfortunately, but we do have some leading innovators here in Estonia. So Skeleton Tech with their supercapacitors and super batteries, autonomous delivery vehicles. We're the only country registered as a region within the Hydrogen Valley. And of course, we have companies from Estonia rapidly rolling out solar parks, wind parks across the CEE. On top of that, we're building or have active sustainability accelerators and communities like the Cleantech Baltics. So it's a great success story here in Estonia, but it was not a sure thing. Estonia started from a pretty poor state. When Estonia regained independence in the early 90s, so actually in 91, it was one of the poorest countries in Europe. Most of the infrastructure had deteriorated or been destroyed during the 50 years of Soviet occupation, which meant that Estonia really had to rebuild from scratch, but had no money to do that. They wanted to have the same levels of public services and welfare as their Nordic partners, Nordic neighbors, but obviously could not afford that. So they took a gamble and decided to go digital and to be the first country that had ever gone digital. Other countries had tried. Finland had recently at that point tried some solutions, but they had failed. So Estonia learned from them and actually was able to deliver. The cool thing about that though, was because Estonia was building these solutions for the first time themselves, it meant that they actually developed a deep pool of talent here in Estonia that was able to build new tech solutions, and more importantly, had the self-belief that they could actually take on massive challenges and win. Just a quick flick through, yeah. Oh, this picture is one from the early 90s. It was Estonia's first prime minister post re-independence, just to show you how bad things were at the time. I think this is, I could be wrong, but I think this is a photo of a protest where people are really showing their concern about the state of the Estonian infrastructure, and in particular, the heating systems going into winter. It's a country where during winter it can get less than -30 degrees through the nights, and a lot of people in the country depend on district hot water boilers to heat their homes. There was one year when there was actually a strong chance that Estonia wasn't going to be able to afford to spin up those boilers for winter, which would have meant that a lot of people would have actually quite literally frozen to death. Fortunately, they found a way around it, but that's how tight things were. So now 99%, we've been saying 99% of all public services are online for years now. I keep hoping we're going to get closer to 100, but I think they keep delivering more public services. So it's hard to get to that full 100% now. We can vote in elections online. And you can imagine this was a massive advantage when COVID hit. Quick timeline. I've borrowed all of these parts of the slides. I'm just going to cherry pick again from them. Before we get to the timeline on this slide, actually, so 91 was re-independence. 94 was when the Estonian government committed to digitalizing the state. 96 was the launch of something called the Tiger's Leap, which was a nationwide IT infrastructure development program, and also moved to teaching kids to code in schools already in the mid-90s. 96 was also when we got our first e-bank, which I think was the first in Europe for that as well. 2000 was when the first e-cabinet was launched, and then the e-tax board. So priorities, let's remove the friction from getting people paying their taxes. 2001 was X-Road, which is actually the backbone of the Estonian Digital Society. This is how all the information data is transferred between all of the different repositories and connects them. Digital signature, ID card, etc. The following year, moving on, by 2005 was when the e-voting or i-voting was possible. 2007, we replaced our ID cards with our phones for identifying ourselves with the government system. So that's when we introduced mobile identity. We now use an app called Smart ID on top of there as well. 2008 was the e-health system, and following shortly behind that was the e-prescription, which means that Estonians didn't now have to go to their doctors to get updated prescriptions. The doctors could actually do that digitally for them. And with their ID card, people could go into their local pharmacy and actually collect their prescriptions. So again, just removing friction, removing waste from society there. And then 2014, e-residency. 2018 was the decision on the proactive government. And this is a really interesting and important one. This is where the government assumes that if the state already has all the information it needs to make a decision about providing a service, they should just do so automatically. They shouldn't require citizens to come in and actually fill out forms to request things and so forth. So things like maternity benefits for new mothers. The government already knows that there's a new baby that's been born. They know who the mother is. They know what her salary is. They know what her bank account is. So why should the mother actually have to apply for those maternity benefits? She doesn't. They get paid automatically. And the other interesting thing looking at this slide is you see over time the speed and the number of innovative services coming in picks up. So as the services go down and actually start removing the friction from actually doing things, more and more new ideas come in and get implemented and tested and then implemented faster. So quickly then, that was the digital government or digital society side. Onto the startup side of things. In the beginning, there was Skype. Skype really was the catalyst for the Estonian startup ecosystem. There was lots of activity happening, but there was no massive success story, no champion for people to follow. So Skype took off in the early 2000s. By 2007, 2008, it was massive, and there were lots following behind it. This again is out of date. I think Estonia now has 10 unicorns that have followed behind Skype. And a lot of them have actually got deep connections to Skype talent, who then went out into the ecosystem and actually started building their own startups and their own solutions there. While these guys were building their startups and their solutions, the community and then the ecosystem was building around them. And this is really important, actually, just to quickly distinguish in my terminology for community and ecosystem. Community is where the participants in the ecosystem actually talk with one another, help one another, share information, and so forth. Ecosystems build on top of communities where they actually start collaborating and creating new value together, perhaps providing one another services or actually building new companies or new solutions together. So this started with the Estonian Founders Society, and again, came out of Skype. The Estonian Founders Society was actually formed initially from the portfolio, the startup portfolio of a fund management group whose responsibility was to invest the funds actually from the Skype founders in Estonia. So they went and set up their own community, initially called the Startup Leaders Club, I believe, which then later on rebranded as the Founder Society. In 2000, so that was 2009, 2010, Garage 48, which runs hackathon events, and also created the first co-working hub and ran regular meet and greet events like coffee clubs, these sort of things. Started to bring the community together to again start creating the connections, sharing information, and actually start building new things together. The Estonian state came in behind them. I guess they were already there, but they became active and formalized it with Startup Estonia in 2011. So you see what's really interesting here is that it was founder-led, and actually still is here in Estonia. It was a founders-led movement that actually started creating all of the activity here in Estonia. The government decided to jump in and actually see if they could boost that, provide some support to boost it. My take on it, and Mick, who's on the call here as well, who was part of Startup Estonia, might have a slightly different take. But my take on it was that it took a while for Startup Estonia to find their place in the ecosystem. Initially, I think they tried to take leadership of the ecosystem, but have actually found that their better role is actually providing support services rather than actually guiding and leading the ecosystem. It really is the founders who still set the directions here. And then Startup Estonia helps them actually, particularly on the government side and so forth, actually create the lobbying and the other resources around that. So after Startup Estonia came in and then providing some funding to the ecosystem, then we had the accelerators jump in. So Game Founders, Build It, Startup Wise Guys, Rototron, I actually think was always private sector. And now it's becoming more and more specialized. So we have sustainability, fintech, deep tech, whatever accelerators. Beamline Accelerator is our first sustainability focused accelerator here in Estonia. So quick thoughts off the back of that. And maybe if there's any comments along the way, let's sort of pick them up as well at this point. So my quick reflections from that is that having watched the Estonian ecosystem evolve, it has been a major sort of evolution, and lots of people have tried to create things, guide things, support things along the way. And a lot of that hasn't worked. Some of the stuff has worked really, really well. A lot of it hasn't worked. So don't design to, it's innovation, right? So you can't design to control the ecosystem. You should design actually for that emergence, because that's the innovation that comes out. Design to enable new ideas to actually come out of it and test in there. The flip of that is actually also embrace emergent design. So as the ecosystem develops and you learn from it, then adapt the design of the ecosystem to be more effective in there. This, of course, assumes that you're now designing an ecosystem as opposed to jumping into one that's already there. I don't think Estonian ecosystem, I think it'd be wrong to say it was an accident, but it certainly isn't here by design. Maybe by desire, but not by design. The other thing is optimize for the creators, optimize for the founders, let them lead, and remove, most importantly, remove friction that might slow the flow of ideas, because an innovation ecosystem is all about the ideas. The founders are there to develop, to validate the ideas, to mold them into solutions and products and services. But it's actually the ideas that are at the core of an innovation ecosystem. So remove anything that actually gets in their way. And this is where you start putting in your ecosystem infrastructure, like accelerators, like funding, these sort of things, to help these move. Any thoughts from anybody at this point, or should I crack on?
I have a thought. I have a quick thought. Is that I haven't actually heard this term emergent design before. And I think especially in the context of innovation ecosystems, that idea of designing not for control, but kind of for enablement. I find that really fascinating. Thanks for sharing.
I think I'm as a because I come from an IT background within big corporations, and we do a lot of systems design work there. You normally design for very specific outcomes, and you have very specific controls and so forth in place in there. And I think it's a risk that ecosystem designers sometimes fall into the same trap, that we try to actually, design for very specific outcomes and with very specific metrics and controls in these. And all these things are very important, but they're there for feedback as opposed to trigger containment, I guess, in there.
Right.
So here are my thoughts on ecosystem design as we go. And while we're talking about design, please don't judge me on my slide design here. I'm very grateful to PowerPoint for its assistance. So key things to think about, key questions to think about when designing for an ecosystem and for a sustainability innovation ecosystem in particular. So with any systems design, first and foremost, and this is pretty obvious, right? Who is it for? Who are you actually designing this for? What's the purpose of the ecosystem? What are you actually creating it for? What are the design boundaries? I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But if you're actually designing an ecosystem, you have to be aware that you can't design for everything and everyone. You need to, at least in the first instance, be very focused on what you're trying to support there. It's not that other things aren't happening around it, but what are you going to focus on, where you're going to actually put in your energy and whatever resources are there. Of course, then performance metrics, you need to know if it's working or not. And then think a lot about the communication and interaction channels within the ecosystem. So I'm going to actually just bring up another quick couple of examples that I'll call on then when I go through these in some more detail. Firstly, Accelerate Estonia. And again, call out to Mick Weineck, who is one of the founders of Accelerate Estonia on the call here. Thankfully, he can't interrupt because his microphone's not working. I'm sure I'll cop it from him later. Anyway, Accelerate Estonia is a very ambitious program from the Ministry of Economics in Estonia, obviously Estonia. It's to build collaborations between exceptional entrepreneurs and the Estonian government, with the goal actually is to increase Estonian GDP through these new innovations. Their assumption is that there are already radical solutions around the world to many of humanity's greatest challenges, and they're only prevented from scaling by the lack of ability, agility, or courage in other governments to innovate with their laws, their regulations, even social license to test these innovations. If we go back to the Estonian development of digital government, there was a little bit of tech in there, but actually most of them were legal innovations that then made the technology, the digital support possible. And so this is where Estonia's strength is actually in those legal innovations, legal regulatory innovations. So why don't we go out to these great innovators from around the world and say, hey, if you've got a great solution that can solve a massive challenge and as you scale globally, make lots of money, let's try it here in Estonia and see if we can both get benefit from that. Okay, that's Accelerate Estonia. Accelerate Estonia is still running. Now, something that came out of Accelerate Estonia was I guess ultimately a movement called Hack the Crisis. Now, Hack the Crisis was our quick response to the COVID lockdown. So what happened was on the evening of the 23rd of February, 2020, the Estonian, like many countries in the world, Estonia was put into lockdown and a state of emergency was declared. The Minister for IT and Entrepreneurship reached out to his team that evening and said, give us some ideas about how we can actually take an opportunity here to build Estonia back stronger off the back of this. That was Accelerate Estonia's minister. And so when Mick, the head of Accelerate Estonia, picked that message up in the morning, he shared it with the team, and we immediately pitched back to the ministry, let's just run an online hackathon. We'll run an online hackathon and we're going to do it tonight. Oh, and by the way, the government has to put all of its resources in there. So all of the key government decision makers have to be available across the weekend to help the participants in the hackathon develop solutions to the crisis. What was stunning is it took 45 minutes, only 45 minutes for the government to come back, the minister to come back and say, yep, let's do this. And then we had those key decision makers available to us from, I guess we kicked off 6 o'clock that evening. We announced at 2 o'clock that afternoon, kicked off 6 o'clock that evening, and boom, over the next 48 hours, it ended up being Estonia's biggest hackathon. And the amazing thing was we had a third of the completed prototypes actually went into live deployment, deployed by the Estonian government in the following week, literally saving jobs, saving lives in there. So that was amazing. What was also amazing was actually the response we got from our neighbors. Because we'd done it online, we had our friends in Latvia, in Sweden, in Poland, in Finland, etc., joining in the hackathon, and then deciding to do the same. And so one of our team members, Kai, actually quickly wrote up a playbook on how we would done that. And literally a couple of days later, so I think we finished on the Sunday, on the Tuesday, Poland, Ukraine, Latvia launched their own hackathons using the same format, bringing in there. And then it kept spreading. So over the next 6 weeks, I think nearly 70 countries ran hackathons based on that format. The biggest ones were in India and in Germany. The German one was just phenomenal about the way that took off. Again, just the power of having close communities and functioning ecosystems meant that they were able to actually act quickly on these. So then we thought, well, do you know what if we could actually turn this into an active global ecosystem? Everybody coming together at the same time and hopefully continuing after that. So we ran something called the Global Hack. The Global Hack was absolutely massive. I think we had 100 different countries getting involved. We had backing from multiple governments, especially the Estonian government, obviously hands-on in there. Multiple EU and UN agencies came in and got involved. Outcome from that, lots of new solutions that got developed and actually rolled out from it. Networks, inspiration, but limited follow-on. We tried off the back of it, but I have to be honest, because we hadn't actually sort of designed this up front and actually thought about this a lot up front, we just moved quickly based on the existing, the challenges that were there. We weren't able to sustain it off the back of that. And that's where it then comes back to thinking about the ecosystem design. What could we have actually done that would have actually sustained that momentum, sustained those connections over time? And don't get me wrong, lots of those personal connections are still there. Some of the organizational connections still exist, but I don't think there's any sort of major movement like the Global Hack actually pushing the agenda forward for CivTech solutions around the world. So going back to my questions from before, these ones here, which will then pick up on those examples. So who's it for? Fundamental here. It's for the creators who actually have the new ideas, who want to develop and test them. We have to think about, or before I get to that, so the creators, then there are the partners, the service providers, the R&D partners and so forth, funders, go-to-markets providers and so forth, who could be there to help. And then there's the community that you're building on or building with. A big question there is, does the community already exist? If a community already exists, then do you actually have the social license to build on top of them? Or how do you engage with them to make that happen? If the community doesn't exist, then how do you build that community? So for example, with Accelerate Estonia, there is an existing really active ecosystem here in Estonia, massive community underneath it and sub-communities. I guess Estonia is now an ecosystem of ecosystems and communities under there. We were pulling on those communities that we're already part of, but actually building a new civic tech community here in Estonia around Accelerate Estonia. Going back to the creators, because this is really important. Who are the creators that we're working with, the ones with the ideas who want to test and develop them. And in particular, what stage are they at? Are these people who are in university labs, R&D labs? Or are they people who are already have a developed technology, have a developed solution, who now want to take it to market? Because they need different things, which means your ecosystem needs to be designed differently to support them. And so this then feeds into, obviously, what the purpose is of your ecosystem. Are you actually looking to develop a totally new sector or market from your region, your university, your corporation? Or are you looking to scale an existing sector or market that you're part of there? Because again, depending on which, you're going to have to optimize for different things. If it's a totally new sector, new market that you're trying to develop, then you're probably going to have to develop the talent and the connections, the communities and networks and so forth to make that happen. So don't already be focusing on providing them with or finding unicorn stage funding for them, or even massive market access. Day one, you're probably wanting to focus on the skills, on the mindsets and the awareness there. And then also your returns that you're looking for. Are you looking for impact returns, or are you looking for financial returns? I really like this concept of a spectrum of intent. I first came across this from the Omidyar network with their investing process and the sort of spectrum that they invest across. Off to one side, you've got companies, startups, whoever, who are really focused on making just money. Not really too fussed about the impact of the business at all. It's really about the money. Then at the other extreme, you've got those who actually really don't care about the business side of things at all. And they just want to create impact. Personally, I don't think you can actually divorce the impact from the business side, because you need the business side to actually help scale it. But there are many out there who actually don't care if they lose money. They will look to live off grants and the likes to actually create the impact they're looking for. And then you've got those in between, those who are impact first, but are very happy to run scalable businesses. And then you've got those who are finance first, who again want to make money, but they want to, what do they call it? Profit for purpose, or is it purpose for profit there? Can't remember which way around it is. But these are people who actually are there first and foremost to make money, but they want to make that money through an impact project. So with Accelerate Estonia, we already always had this tension as to what we were designing for here, because the Ministry of Economics, first and foremost, wanted the economic returns. But the people we were reaching out to, the founders that we were looking to work with, were often looking first and foremost to creating impact. And then if money came off that, that would be okay as well. So yeah, that tension is still there, but it means that as and when it does work, there are going to be some amazing solutions coming out there that are both creating global impact and actually able to justify that impact or scale that impact inherently or intrinsically, because they've got the funding through their ability to create money or to create revenue. Design boundaries. So this is when I was talking about the founders. It's really easy to design ecosystems and programs which are not only built on top of ecosystems, but design ecosystems for particular creators, particular stages of maturity in the creators and their ideas, but actually look for outcomes which are somewhat dreamlike for those ideas and the founders at that stage, right? Just because you're looking for massive impact, massive returns, but actually you're working with perhaps founders who have never run a business before, or who've never developed ideas before. And so at that point, you've got to make a choice. Are you going to design for solutions that are ready to go to market and can and so need just go-to-market support, funding, access to your networks and these sort of things, and then let run with it? Or do you need to design for R&D labs, very early business support, these sort of things, to actually then develop the early stage solutions that can then later go on to the market itself? So two different ways I think about it, at least, is what's the TRL level that you're designing for? So are you looking at really, really early stage technologies or ideas that actually need technological breakthrough for them to work? Or are you already working with, or you want to work with ones that are already market ready, who can already create their impact? And on the other side, what's the stage of the founders and their businesses that you're looking to design for as well, or support as well? Are they ones who are really just starting out? And sorry, I realize this is quite small. Particularly on the right-hand side, or the startup ecosystem map, you can get that from the Startup Estonia website as well. The link is in the presentation there. So yeah, again, are you looking to work with people who are just new to building businesses, or are you looking to work with ones who already got businesses up and running and now just need support to scale? At some point, you'd love to do all of it, but day one, pick one, build your ecosystem around supporting them, and then add on to the others later. And this then goes back to, okay, well, who are the creators that you've got at the moment? So who are you designing for? Who are the creators you've got at the moment? Who are the partners they've got to work with? Do you have that ecosystem maturity to focus on one particular stage or the other? And then be thinking in funnels. The way of the funnel, I love funnels. Obviously, they come from largely from the sales environment, but I think any process, any workflow that you go through where you're going to be starting with lots of things at one end, and by the time you get to the other end, through a level of sort of filters and trials, there's only going to be a few of them. I think in the way of funnels, and things in this case could be ideas, that could be startups, that could be whatever project's going through there. And as you create your funnel or your workflow for your ecosystem, so that how they get from starting point, sort of engaging with the ecosystem, to actually then the endpoint, which is then creating the value you're looking for from the ecosystem. What are the stages they go through to get there, even if they're not explicit sort of actual stages that they themselves recognize them going through? But how do they get from one stage to the next in your measurement of the ecosystem and how it flows? And how do you help them do that without, again, going back to this point of trying to control them and putting them on a determined path that might actually interrupt their innovation or their potential for innovation? And then performance metrics. Okay, how are you going to measure the value? I realize that we're racing through time, and I would like a discussion here as well. So I'm going to race ahead quickly here and then come to the discussion. So obviously, you need to work out how you're going to measure the value that you're trying to create from the ecosystem. Is it measurement of the number of ideas that are going through the ecosystem? Is it the number of companies, founders who are active there? Are you going to look at impact measures rather? Are you going to look, well, okay, through this ecosystem, we might have worked with 1,000 different ideas and only one of them worked, but that one has actually removed a gigaton of CO2 from the atmosphere. And that would be an amazing success, right, if that's your focus. You could look at IP, the amount of IP that's been created from R&D labs or likes. Or you can look at financial measures like the amount of funding, the amount of revenue, so forth, the amount of tax. This is a big one actually in the Estonian startup ecosystem, looking at the amount of tax that's being paid by startups back into the Estonian economy. Communication channels, obviously everybody needs to be talking all the time. This is really important to keep the ecosystem alive, to keep it active, and to keep it ready to act when opportunities come along. One point there is there's never going to be one single channel that people will talk on, so don't try to force it as an ecosystem designer or lead. There'll be lots of different channels that people are communicating on. Just make sure they are communicating. And this is an horrible slide, but the point I just wanted to make here is to keep it active and to actually drive the ecosystem. I do really like this process and this actually it should be going in both directions, because it's all of these feed off one another to inspire people through to actually come up with ideas and to do things. And that can come through champions like Skype, epic challenges like we put out for Hack the Crisis, and actually just celebrating the success of others in there. Empower them through bringing in skills, showing them the process, the workflow, even if it's just conceptual from getting from one end to the other, giving them access to networks and to people who can actually, or corporations, whoever, partners who can validate the ideas and the solutions that they're building, and then obviously funding and the likes if that's what's needed to resource them. And then regularly activate through events like hackathons, like competitions, like workshops, and these sort of things. And in each event, in each workshop, you'll go through the same cycle of inspiring and empowering and activating, and then it starts to feed off one another. Okay, that is the end of the formal presentation. I'm really hoping to get some people talking here as well, because these again are just my reflections from what I've seen in Estonia, and also building stuff with like football clubs in the UK. Even at a corporate level, it's the same sort of process that we go through. I'm just looking at Mick's comment here. Okay, so it's okay, so a good resource for people to go to. I know Mick also mapped out the concepts of comparing technology readiness with, as he's got here, legal and social readiness of new ideas to go through the system as well. So can I throw it out there? Does anybody want to challenge what I've said here? Does anybody want to come up, add their own experience, new ideas here? Because I really wanted this as an opportunity for people to share. Actually, maybe I can, if you're still there, pick on Ines a little bit as well, because I know you think a lot about this stuff.
As in my experiences with the Estonian ecosystem, or in general, like creating
with ecosystem design, building, and the likes.
In general, right? Not
No, your own experience and your own thoughts, not necessarily about Estonia. I'm just using Estonia as a sort of base example.
No, I think what he said there in terms of finding those champions, right? I think that really speaks to, right? So things that can truly appeal. And I think in looking especially at the question of like climate leadership, which I'm getting quite close to, so finding those leaders, right? So finding, and why are they leaders? Whether it's because they're pushing for kind of radical ideas, such as, for instance, making every job a climate job, and what's behind that, sort of how what that means for how businesses would have to reinvent themselves in the area of a climate crisis. So finding these sort of champions and the epic challenges of kind of reimagining industry, reimagining how what we consider as relevant metrics business wise. Again, considering the new standards that the European Commission rolled out to put sustainability on par with financial reporting. So these things, these things are kind of are makers in terms of understanding the ecosystem in a given space, such as sustainability, climate. That's maybe why you asked me. So I'm talking about that. And then celebrating successes. I think I don't know, like the ones that you mentioned were pretty significant. These hard to beat, frankly, but definitely resonated with anybody who was there. I don't have much to add to that. Those are some immediate thoughts. But I also just another comment there on designing for emergence. That is indeed such a powerful concept, right? Of just allowing, of just enabling, and knowing about about Estonia. This has really succeeded at such a powerful scale, right? That people really feel enabled, that that you will find the support, rather than you're trying to fit into a frame. which I think is the usual design of such or I mean, people are just trying already to come up with something that they can get people into, rather than, hey, we're going to build something to allow people to build that some things, right, plural, rather than so this reverse is quite powerful, as we've seen, right? So thank you, Calum, for laying all of this history and analysis out. Quite inspiring as usual.
Thanks a lot, Ines. So there was a thought that you sparked just now, and it's gone, which is a bit annoying. But I think to your point about actually enabling people to go and do stuff, I actually really love thinking about innovation ecosystems, whatever the sector. Innovation ecosystems are actually, again, all about those precious ideas, and the people who actually came up with the ideas are actually just their sort of channels for those ideas to get out and to be tested and so forth. And so the ideal ecosystem, innovation ecosystem, is one. And again, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about at a global level, country level, sectorial, or even inside a single company. The ideal innovation system is one that actually allows those ideas to flow freely and to be tested rapidly, and without the friction for the ideas or the people who came up with them that would actually prevent them trying again. And this is something that I have learned that sort of came to mind when I was just watching how things were happening here in Estonia and how I felt myself doing things here in Estonia, was that the fact that it was so easy to actually try stuff meant that I was actually really keen to try more stuff and more stuff and more stuff, because there wasn't anything lost. It was actually just a sort of a positive feedback loop that came off from it, right? So that's been wonderful. Yeah, those are my thoughts for now. So I was about to go on a long rant about something that doesn't matter here.
No, I think first of all, I think all of this information is incredibly fascinating. And just to jump in with my kind of my 2 cents on your presentation, I think the whole concept of competition and like how do you incorporate, I think your discussion on kind of the hackathons and kind of the role that those kind of public-private partnership type initiatives played in helping kind of strengthen, Estonia's innovation ecosystem. I think that's incredibly fascinating. And I think in terms of, building forward VC's ecosystem as well, I think there definitely is a role for, friendly competition, for kind of that collaborative, the solutions already exist. How do we kind of capitalize on them? And I think that's really powerful. I did have a quick question for you, because I know, and obviously I completely understand that your expertise kind of lays within kind of the European bounds and within Estonia, given your experience. But I'm wondering if there's any, maybe emerging ecosystems that you're seeing kind of on a more global scale, whether that's in the US, whether that's, Australia, whether it's Asia, whether it's, Latin America, anything that's kind of got you really excited, anything you're curious about in terms of, I guess, similar initiatives taking place across the world.
Look, I've got to be honest, what's exciting me most at the moment, I'm not that aware of everything that's going on, obviously. I would love to know more about what's going on, for example, in Southeast Asia and in Africa, because there are a lot of people doing some super cool stuff out there that we just don't have visibility of. But what excites me the most are these global ecosystems that are developing, where people are now learning to collaborate asynchronously across time zones using the tools here. Stuff that was really exciting coming out of the global hack that actually, I believe, continued off the back of it. You would have teams forming from people who was in, there was one team I remember that I used to use as an example. There was somebody who was in a tiny South Pacific island, way out in the middle of nowhere, on a tiny island, collaborating with Ines remembers, collaborating with team members from Kenya, Ghana, and I think their lead mentor was in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh. And to have these guys building together and all of a sudden recognizing that, you know what, I might be sitting out in the middle of nowhere and I might have no clue what I want to build or how to build it or something like this. But you know what, there are loads of people out there who do have these skills that I'm missing. And I can just connect with them with my idea and we can build something amazing off there, or at least test something amazing. So this is the most exciting thing for me, I think, is that people are building together across these time zones, and also the young'uns. And I get to say that because I'm obviously a father, so I get to talk about young'uns, and the young'uns actually don't give a damn about our sort of constraints that we try to put on these things. And I love that lack of respect for us. I think it's a great way to go. And actually, just one other thing I want to pick up on there, Gina, and you're talking about the competition, it's actually a really important point as well for people who are building ecosystems, who are designing and building ecosystems and trying to drive them. You can become very possessive about what's going on inside there, right? Don't. Just don't. Especially for an innovation ecosystem where the idea is to design for that emergence, for these things to come up. Rather, if people are building competition for what you're doing, fantastic, especially in this space, in the climate space, in the sustainability space, the more the merrier. And if they succeed, celebrate that, celebrate, support, and yeah, I don't want to get too corny and start talking about love and so forth, but you get the point.
No, that's. I think you're completely right, and I think there's definitely there's space to go around within the innovation ecosystem world, and none of that should be limited in any way. And totally agree in terms of the opportunities for international collaboration. I think especially with channels like Zoom and Slack and all these different communities that are emerging, incredibly powerful and very exciting.
Including the likes of the Forward, of course.
Exactly.
How many,
small part of the puzzle.
How many countries are active in Forward now?
Oh, I have no idea. I do know that it's an incredibly global community. So I would guess, there regional representation, across the globe. But in terms of the exact country, I don't think we've tracked that yet. But
it's probably building too fast.
It is. No, it's growing. Matt's doing an incredible job. Matt and the rest of the team. Yes, and then definitely a small piece of the puzzle, and looking forward to kind of seeing everything that comes out of that. But Calum, I don't know if you'd like to put your email in the chat potentially. We had a few hello to all of our live streamers on YouTube. Great to have you guys here, even not in the Zoom properly, but Calum will be sure to send out this recording in our newsletter and through our channels, and make sure your presentation gets shared in the widest way, in the widest net possible. And we'll be sure to share your email as well.
So I'll put the email there, but also if people are already in the community on WhatsApp or Slack, then just hit me directly.
Wonderful. I will actually right now, let me just quickly drop these links in here, just so that everybody has them, in case anyone in here specifically. I know we're a small group, in case anybody is not yet in the chats. We'll share these with everybody, and that way you have them.
Yeah, nice.
But Calum, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and we'll make sure to distribute the recording as appropriate.
Super. Thank you very much, Gina.
Thank you very much.
Ines.
Thank you, Ines.
Okay.
Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.